gonna shift gears a little. I would love your opinion on this next topic, Niko. As progressives or people in Hollywood, you know, we've generally, I grew up liberal, progressive. I worked for the Democratic Party for like 20 years, you know, off and on. And I know you and I worked on a campaign for the SCIU, but way back in the day, for a, you know, Democratic Party voting, getting people out to vote. So we had this mindset that we were the good guys, and then the Fox News is the bad guys, and like they're the corrupt ones, but we're the ones, you know, MSNBC and CNN, like we're going to report the facts, and we're for the people, and we're going to make sure everybody's vote counts. I believed all that for so long. I think there's a lot of people that still do. I think a lot of people still believe that, or they want to hold on to that I guess that formula that Fox is bad and MSNBC is good, and we're got to be on the good team, and they're not able to see that all of it is corrupt. And I think that one of the spearheaders right now that I think is doing an exceptional job at trying to bridge that gap and help people understand that it's not really like that is Russell Brand. And I love this guy. He came to LA a little while ago, and he's been all over. He does his little tour, but he did tour around the States, and he went on Bill Maher the other week. And I want to play this clip because I thought this is fascinating, because even Bill Maher, who has a great stance, a great take on COVID, great, like he calls out a lot of stuff. He still is a guy that thinks, you know, Fox bad, MSNBC good. And I loved what happened when Russell Brand goes on here, and he actually calls out one of his guests. And so let's play this clip, and I want your take on it, Niko, after we're done. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Russell Brand on Bill Maher.
I've not known you long, but I love you already. But I have to say that it's disingenuous to claim that the biases that are exhibited on Fox News are any different from the biases exhibited on MSNBC. It's difficult to suggest that these corporations operate as anything other than mouthpieces for their affiliate owners in BlackRock and Vanguard. And unless we start to embrace, and also, mate, like just spiritually, if I may use that word in your great country, we have to take responsibility for our own perspective. I've been on that MSNBC, mate. It was propagandist nutcrackery on there. I went on a show called Morning Joe. It was absurd the way they carried on.
Good Morning Joe.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know what it was. It wasn't morning. There was no one called Joe there. No one could concentrate. They didn't understand the basic tenets of journalism. No one was willing to stick up for genuine American heroes like Edward Snowden. No one was willing to talk about Julian Assange and what he's suffered trying to bring real journalism to the American people. And I think to sit within the castle of MSNBC throwing rocks at Fox News is ludicrous.
My friend,
make MSNBC better. Make MSNBC great again.
My friend, the moment
fight them on a territory you can win on, Joe.
Russell, darling, the moment that you give me a specific example, an actual example.
Okay, I'll give you one.
Wait, just wait.
Wait.
Just
we need a specific example.
How about a specific? Let me tell you what the specific I'd like to hear of. I'd like to hear a specific example, a provable-specific example of an MSNBC correspondent or anchor being on television saying something they knew was false, and we're saying behind the scenes to people, I'm about to go out, and we know that the election wasn't stolen or something equivalent.
Example.
But I will go out on television and say the opposite. I will lie.
When's my answer?
Just give me the specific example.
I understand the basic point.
Give me a specific example.
All right.
I'm with you. I think it's a false equivalency, Russell.
It's a
no, it's not. That's your own biases, mainly.
It's not about bias. It's a false equivalency because you don't actually know anything about any of these organizations you're talking about. Even on MSNBC ones. Big fucking deal.
My darling, it was more than enough.
You can't come up with such a carry. You don't have a single actual fact.
Do you want an example? Do you want an example?
Yes.
The ludicrous, outrageous criticisms of Joe Rogan around ivermectin, deliberately referring to it as a horse medicine when they know it's an effective medicine.
Yeah, that's not a bad
Rachel
example.
Maddow turning up on the TV saying, if you take this vaccine, you're not going to get it, when it hadn't been clinically trialed for transmission.
Non-responsive.
You have to listen.
Wait.
Do you think you can improve America by determinedly and avowedly condemning Fox News without acknowledging that you're participating in the same game? Did you not just listen to Bernie Sanders, someone who plainly, legitimately believes in this country and believes it's possible to change, but is bound by corruption, is bound bound by the lobbying system. Surely it's clear to you, Bill, as one of the great pundits and experts and comic voices, that systemic change is required. Money has to be taken out of politics. We need new political systems that genuinely represent ordinary Americans so that we can overcome cultural differences. And bickering about which propagandist network is the worst is not going to save a single American life, not improve the life of a single American child, not going to improve America's standing in the world, and the world needs a strong America. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that. So you have an obligation, a duty, not to condemn these people.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that he says corruption. Brand says corruption, but what he's not mentioned, but he's made a great points, is that this is the business model of these news outlets, is to speak to people that fall in their camp. And this had to do with the big changes that the media went through going back years, in which, they used to try to appeal to a wide audience, the Walter Cronkite of journalism, a trusted face that all Americans can turn to in times of crisis. Well, as the financial situation changed around the media, and conglomeration, larger and larger companies, that they began to speak directly to the bias of their audiences. And that's what they essentially do. People go to the bias that they have and they watch the news there. If they are going to stop presenting their bias, they're going to lose their market share. So, a corporation has to prioritize the bottom line. That's their duty, fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. So, they're just doing what they are designed to do. And, it's like if MSNBC, Rachel Maddow tells you that the vaccine stops transmission. No, it's not that. He's asking for an example. When did they lie? When did they lie? It's not that they had to lie or do something that they purposely knew, although they may have. It's that they make assumptions that they can't verify and that they cherry pick facts to fit their narrative.
Niko, I'll go further, because you brought up the Rachel Maddow looking in the camera and telling people to get vaxxed because it's going to stop the spread. You won't give it, you won't get it, and you won't give it, and you can go back to normal. That was an actual pitch for Pfizer to make them money off a lie. And I go further and say that was nefarious of her to do that, because if it was just being sloppy, or like you said, I think you're actually giving her the benefit of the doubt and saying, oh, she just assumed. I think it's way worse. And the reason why, and you can just watch what she does after Pfizer admits that they never tested for transmission. Where is Rachel Maddow's accountability? Why hasn't she gone on her show and said, we assumed this? Now we know that Pfizer never tested. So I apologize for putting that out there into the internet.
I don't think
there is no apology, because it was nefarious from the beginning. She has no intention of correcting that mistake. Therefore, we need to assume at this point it was by design a lie on purpose, just like Fox News always used to do.
Well, her audience has been so primed to reject these kinds of arguments that I don't really think her audience wants to hear her make a correction on that topic. I think they believe that the vaccination effort was important, and she helped shepherd it along by reporting in her fashion. I can't read her mind, but I can say that she definitely reported things that turn out to be falsehoods, and those falsehoods have led to a lot of injuries from the vaccine, in my opinion. But this kind of goes back to a disconnect in the progressive liberal mind. And you mentioned the working on the Democratic side, and these are things that this was after college many years ago, and at that time and to this day, I'm a very strong anti-war stance. I mean, that's really one of my core principles. And I tend to like to look at the electoral process on an issue-based level rather than a personality politics. And when George Bush got us into the Iraq War, a lot of Democrats and progressives had no trouble understanding. Condoleezza Rice's name is on an oil tanker, and Bechtel's over there, and then this is a military industrial complex, boondoggle. And so
And
people,
don't forget Halliburton. We saw
Halliburton,
that. It was
right,
easy to see Dick Cheney's tie to Halliburton and the profiteering of
Right.
oil in Iraq and all
right.
the
We came
war.
up with this stuff. This was our bread and butter. Like, wow, the system's corrupt, and we want to stop the war, and these darn Republicans, and but it's just the situation is more complex. And what you've seen now is that the neoconservatives, who really drove for the Iraq War, have shifted their alliances to the Democratic Party, and the Democrats now vote for war more frequently than the Republicans. And Trump was the only president we've had in many years that didn't start a war. That's not to say he did many things right, but he didn't get us into another foreign war, and that was incredibly rare. So where were the liberal and progressive sides when to applaud that action? Where was Rachel Maddow saying, yeah, you appealed to progressive value, he appealed to progressive values here? That didn't happen.
No.
In fact, they totally just hated everything he did as a reflex. And I think there's no bigger oversight in this area than as it pertains to the pharmaceutical industry, because I would argue, and it's now coming out that the Defense Department was behind the development of the mRNA vaccines, and also, enlisting companies like BioNTech and others to produce the vaccine. So there's a pharmaceutical military industrial complex. And when the Democrats see that, oh, well, Halliburton gave campaign contributions and now we're in another war. That's corruption at the highest level. That's our officials. But when pharma, like I said, which is giving far more donations, influences elections, influences the media companies, somehow the left doesn't seem to get it. Doesn't seem to say, wow, this is the pharmaceutical industrial complex manipulating data for profit. Why don't they get it? Because I think part of it is that they've been primed to really look at anyone who questions health, leading scientists on health, so vaccinology and other major tenets of modern medicine, as sort of a nativist, maybe Christian fundamentalist, anti-science, anti-evolution, redneck, uneducated, toothless imbeciles, and that's kind of the gut reaction to this. And it's not really, let me evaluate whether or not there's any legitimacy to this. And that's, like, to me, that's a big part of the whole issue, is that people aren't evaluating facts, because their facts have just become a tool of different interests to promote their narrative. So you can promote your narrative. You can find facts to promote any narrative. If you're Fox News, you got plenty of facts to tell you that, guns don't kill people, or whatever it is. And, on the other side, you got facts to say the other. So if you want to argue on facts, you can't, because you can always have a contrary fact or a contrary statistic. You can dice statistics any way you want. So what really becomes the important discussion, this is something you and I have talked about, is that the narrative, and that's why Hollywood and storytellers are so important right now, because really the narrative is where you can have a discussion that's meaningful with someone. What should medicine do? What should the government's role be in our health? What are our ideals? What kind of society do we want? These kinds of larger narrative questions are important to come to agreement on, because you can always find facts to fuel your argument. But if you don't agree on the narrative, you don't get anywhere. You just call the other person crazy.
Excellent point, Niko. And I do have to warn you, you're sounding a little bit like that right-wing crazy nut job Russell Brand, who's preaching for peace and love and thought and human connection and all those awful, horrible, crazy ideas that for some reason the progressive left have abandoned. So yeah, I would warn you, just be careful with your peace and love there, Niko. With that said, I do have to say, like, we do need more Russell Brands. We do need more Niko Kyriakous. We need more.
And Matt Weinglasses.
Well, no, I mean, hey, I'm just running a production company here, but we need more conversation.